Okay. All right. So we are recording. Very good. So let's actually take a look at some of the examples, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a few problems, and mostly I'm going to let you do this on your own, as I do with all the homework, right? Remember, keep handwriting your argument on physical paper. It does something, right? Or again, take the PDF of the textbook and create a good notes app, right? Notability also works too, right? So if you're tech savvy, you can create a PDF and journal of doing these homeworks inside with your stylus. You have that technology. My hands are really, really, really cool. This is a really dirty rag. No, it's not dirty, just has marker ink, right? So I shouldn't handle things that are white like this binder. Logic. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the examples. I'm going to share the textbook, but we're just going to go over it, right? I won't actually need to use my marker for this. We're just going to go over some of these homework problems in mind. Share that, share screen, go here, all right. So just to summarize, here's just the list, right? These are the list of the statements that we just went over. And these are the non-arguments or non-inferential passages, right? Warnings, piece of advice, statements of belief or opinion, right? You can actually write belief or opinion, belief/opinion. I consider them the same thing. Loosely associated statements, reports, expository passages, illustrations, explanations, and conditional statements, right? All right. So number one, the turkey vulture is called by that name because its red featherless head resembles the head of a wild turkey, right? So let me just, this is one of those strange times where I actually do always search when I'm in the turkey vulture. Let me give you a picture, right? These things are ugly, right? They give you creeps. Anyway, that's what turkey vultures look like. Right? It literally looks like it has a turkey's head. So what do you think is going on here? Like, why do we consider this right here, right? Is this an argument, yes or no? Now, it does have the word because here. So you need to think, is it controversial that the turkey vulture's name is called the turkey vulture, or is it simply accepted fact? You kind of think about where I'm going with this, right? But remember what I said about the word because. The word because is, most of the time, for us, a premise indicator. But here, is that the statement that's doing the what? Yes, you're right, it's explanation. I paused there in case you wanted to pause the video. I guess I should have indicated that already, right? But like, yes, this is an explanation. There's no reason why anyone would have to make an argument about why the turkey vulture is called the turkey vulture, especially once they've seen this picture, right? Literally looks like it has a turkey head, but it's vulture, right? It's not rocket science. So again, that would be explanation. So write non-argument or non-inferential passage, and then put what you think it is. Number two, if public education fails to improve the quality of instruction in both primary and secondary schools, then it is likely that it will lose additional students to the private sector in years ahead. What do we think about number two? Remember what I said in lecture last period. What type of statement is this? Pause the video. Take a look at your list. It is definitely, yes, you're right. It's definitely a conditional statement. I'm just going to always imagine that you're getting it right, right? Now, is this conditional statement an if-then statement on its own? Or are there other statements, including other if-then statements, that are involved with it? Right. There's no other if-then statement. So the rule is if it's an if-then statement on its own, it can't be a what? Correct. It can't be an argument. Now, we're going to do number 3 together, right? Take a look at number 3. Freedom of the press is the most important of our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms. Without it, our other freedoms would be immediately threatened. Furthermore, it provides the fulcrum for the advancement of new freedoms. So, we have this passage. Is it an argument, yes or no? Pause to discuss. You're right. Some people might say that the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is our most important freedom. This one came first. So, is this a controversial statement in which you would need to supply evidence to suggest that our most important constitutionally guaranteed freedom is the freedom? That's the First Amendment. Yes, absolutely. And this right here is an implicit claim. You'll notice there's no indicator words, right? But you could take this statement right here to be a premise. Our other freedoms would be threatened if we could not have access to a free press. Furthermore, here's another premise, and furthermore itself is not an indicator word, right? Some students after this homework think that furthermore was on that list. It's not. It's just like in addition to, right? It's one of those interjection words, right? So it provides the fulcrum for the advancement of new freedoms. Now, the reason for that is, think Obergefell v. Lawrence, right? Which was the right for same-sex partners to marry, right? We had a lot of discourse for that for 20, 30 years in terms of the LGBTQIA community. And then take a look. Those people can actually enter into lifelong partnerships with monogamous partners. And the idea here is we had to have some First Amendment political discourse to suggest that this should be a right, even though it was not a recognized right for those couples to marry before that Supreme Court decision, right? So the First Amendment seems to be the place where we discuss the advancement of new rights and freedoms. So that seems to be a really good premise, but that plays the role of premise for the conclusion number 3, right? So number 3 is an example, right? So determine if it's an argument or non-inferential argument. Number 3 is definitely an argument, right? You have access to the number 4. I'm just trying to take a look. All right. So number 5, it is strongly recommended that you have your house inspected for termite damage at the earliest possible opportunity. How many statements do we have here? 1. That's right. Now, how many statements do you need for an argument? 2. You need at least 1 premise and 1 conclusion. So, given that we don't have that here, so what would this be? If someone's making a recommendation to us, yes, that's right. It's a piece of advice, right? So we've seen pieces of advice. Obviously, I can't do all of these problems with you. Let's do one more, number 6. Mosquito bites are not always the harmless irritations most of us take them to be. For example, some mosquitoes carry West Nile virus, and people who are infected can become very sick or even die. So the question here is, we see the word example, and we associate the word illustration with words that provide an example. However, think very hard about number 6. Pause to discuss. Is this a non-argumentative passage or an argumentative passage? Yes, that's right. This is an example of the aside in the chapter of an argument from example. The conclusion is mosquito bites are not always the harmless little irritation most take most of us take them to be. And they provide some evidence. There are some mosquitoes who are disease carrying. So the implied conclusion is that they're not always harmless. And it gives an example as a premise to advance the conclusion that's the first statement. Mosquito bites are not always the harmful irritation most of us take them to be. So as you proceed through these, right, take a look, memorize this taxonomy, because my quiz for this unit assumes the practice of these categorizations that you could pick them out, right? And then I will do the same thing as the homework does. I'll list like an if-then statement on its own. You're supposed to recall that it's a, you know, it's a is this a non-inferential passage? If so, what is it? A, conditional statement, B, warning, C, piece of advice, or D, none of the above because it's actually an argument, right? And again, for number 2, you would have to answer it. It's conditional statement, not argument. So that's kind of what we're doing in this homework. Obviously, I'm going to leave these questions for the bulk of you to practice. So practice them up and continue forward. And remember, keep thinking logically.